So growing up, how did you view being a mother?
Right. So growing up, right off the bat, my mom was a single mom of three, so including me and my two sisters. Um, and viewing motherhood with a mother who was a single mom, it looked like it was a struggle. It looked like a lot of sacrifices had to be made. Like, that's what I view motherhood as. I didn't look at it as like the easiest job in the world, just because I knew how much my mother struggled, and she only had one income. She got like income from downtown, so Social Security income. Um, and my dad, he lived in Buffalo to about I was 13, and then he moved to Atlanta. So growing up, I saw the view of motherhood was just sacrifices that always had to be made. There was a lot of love given at the same time. Um, like just seeing my mom like raise us all three of us with kind of not having no personal life of her own. Um, it like I said, I knew kind of coming into me being a mom and me coming into motherhood, I knew that it wouldn't be just like the easiest job. It looked like a lot of struggles and sacrifices, but at the same time, it was rewarding. My mother made sure that the first day of school we had clothes, there was like food on the table, there was money she can give me for allowances, but at the same time, the picture of motherhood, I looked at her as like a strong woman. But other than that, yeah, that was pretty much my view of motherhood.
But my mom was a single mother, and I guess you could say she did the best that she could. But my brother and I have been in foster care a couple times, and she always got us back. Um, we had some good memories. There was a lot of bad memories in my childhood, if I'm going to be completely honest. My mother and I today, we don't speak. As a matter of fact, none of us actually speak to her. She had gotten married when I was 7 to a guy she barely knew. And prior to that, I mean, I remember a boyfriend that she had. I remember when she dated my father, and but it was kind of like I remember her dealing with them or upset because of whatever they were going through. And my brother, it was more so my brother and I remember, but my siblings and I, we kind of were just like there. There's not much of a memory before 7 until she got married. Um, and then kind of same thing. She was married to somebody for about 3.5 years, and it ended because I was actually raped for 3 years, from the age of 7 to almost 11, and their marriage came to an end behind that. So when we moved back to Buffalo, because at the time we weren't in Buffalo, so when we moved back to Buffalo, it was kind of the same thing. Kind of when I needed that mothering time and my mother to be there for me, it was kind of she had the poor me attitude. Poor me. I'm now on my own. I got to take care of the kids on my own. I'm getting this divorce. My husband did this to me.
Like my first memory of my mother, she was going to school and I was like 4 years old, probably younger than that. And we would have to get on the bus. We would have to get up really, really early in the morning, and she would drop me off to this daycare center. But then we would always go to Dunkin' Donuts every morning before she had to go to school. So that's like my first memories of my mom, and I used to just always remember like she was just very protective of me, and it was just like me and mommy. I had a little brother at the time, but he was a baby, so it was literally just me and her all the time as she was getting ready to go to school. And that was just like our time together, and I just always felt very nurtured by her, like very protected. So it's like my first memory of my mom.
My mom, I would say she's the first person that introduced me into what love is and a motherly love. So we had that relationship where sometimes I'll be mad at her, then I'll be back loving her. She was strong. She introduced me to my work ethic, basically. So when I was younger, she would take me to work with her. So, and she would be working doubles, overnights, and then my dad would pick me up. So when basically going to work with her, that's how my work ethic is. I follow that same exact thing. I'm working doubles. I'm doing what I have to do to make it. So she always taught me to be hardworking from that, and caring. So she worked at a place working with people with disabilities. So she always taught me not to see different. So when I went to work with her, I'm calling the individuals that work Mrs., Mr., just as I would any other person. So she raised me to be a well-rounded person just through taking me to work with her. you know. So, and she taught me love, hard work. She just always was going to get it, you know what I mean? So she's always working.
She was a young mom at that, so she had me at 16, and that's the only mother figure I would say I had growing up. I did have like my grandmother and my aunts to kind of like navigate through life with as well, but the core of it all was my mom, you know. I kind of feel like I grew up with her more than anything, just because she had me at 16. Like you said, she taught me what she knew and the things that she knew growing up, but at the same time, she was still a young woman trying to grow into her own. So a lot of times I felt like she was my sister more than she was my mom, if I'm being completely transparent. Just because, like I said, just the age difference and the things I went through with her, and it like I knew she was my mom, and it always felt like I know that's my mom, but she felt more like a sister. Even till today, she still feels like my sister, because the age difference is just, she's young. I'm 30, she's 47. Yeah.
But never once did I ever hear her say, I don't want to do this today. I'm over the day. I'm tired. Like, she kept a smile on her face. I never really saw her like in a depression mode. I never saw the struggle from her, but I knew it was there just because money would be tight. I knew it was there when I saw sometimes there wasn't food in the fridge. There was just like packets of noodles and bread, and that's what we went until her food stamps came. But she never once said, oh, like, I wish I had more money, or I wish I had this, or, you know, she never expressed it to me. And I think that was like kind of like the mold to our foundation in the household, just because she never made it clear to us, because, you know, she made the best of it.
And I was stuck to kind of deal with what I was going through that had happened to me for those 3 years. And she wasn't there then. There's actually been 2 times I can recall just not wanting to live as a child. And when we moved back to Buffalo, after all this happened, my mom was just upset, and she's always had like that's the poor me attitude. And I just remember I just didn't want to live no more. And I just remember I was so close to my older brother, and I felt like I couldn't leave my older brother here in this household without me. But I only told my older sister this, but I remember when I was younger, when all this had happened, had transpired when we moved back, and my mother was just upset. She was yelling. We used to get, whoopings, if that's what you want to call it, sure. And I laid down one night and I wrote a note to my brother, and I put it under my pillow. And I kind of went to sleep like I was Sleeping Beauty. Like I laid down, put my hands over me like this, and I asked God to forgive me, because, I grew up in the church. I grew up singing. I grew up praise dancing. I grew up that, like, you know, killing yourself was like a ticket to hell. But I just couldn't take what I was going through as a child anymore. And I wrote that note, and I apologized to my brother, told him how much I loved him, that I just couldn't take what I was going through, because even after, I had been called stuff like little whores and husband stealers. And at this point, I had just turned 11. So the example I had as a mother, I really didn't have a mother growing up. And my grandmother was in the picture, and no matter how hard she tried to get us or to be a part of us, my mom put the race card, because we're biracial. And for some reason, the city would put us in foster care with a black family rather than our white grandmother, because we identified more with the black side of us than the white side. And it was more so the hate my mother had with my grandmother. So we were with strangers rather than our own grandmother. So I've literally seen so much, and I grew up at a young age. And I remember waking up that night I wrote that note to my brother. I had took a bottle of ibuprofen, because at this point I thought that's what was gonna take me out. And God was just like, nah, it ain't your time. You're gonna wake up in the morning. I remember having the worst stomach pain. And I was just too scared to tell my mother what I did. And I'm pretty sure I thought I had a hole in my stomach. And I would not tell that lady. And I just, you know, I dealt with the pain for those couple of days. And, you know, God said it wasn't my time. And from there on out, I realized, that's when I was 11. I was close to my 12th birthday. I realized, like, you know, your father's not in the picture. You know, you see him here and there. And then your mother is not a mother. She just, I never understood why she kept getting us back. Like, why you just didn't let us stay in the system. But she kept getting us back. And I realized right then and there that I had to do what I had to do. Like, my brother's 4 years older than me. I remember at this time, so I was 12. I remember when he was 15, turning 16, he was always working. Whatever I needed, my brother got for me. You know, he was young, taking care of one of his younger sisters. And from there, I did what I had to do, whatever my mother told me to do when I got home. Made sure the house was clean, my siblings was taken care of, whatever she needed me to do, I did it. And I would go right to work. I started working on the books at 15. I would do anything possible to get out my house. But to answer your question, I feel like I didn't have parents growing up, no.
So growing up, my mom was strict. So she was on the weekend, I'm cleaning. I'm not going everywhere with my friends. So my friends would go to different parties. Mom would be like, no, you're not going. So that's where most of our conflicts would come in. You never let me do anything. You're trying to shelter me. You're trying to protect me from everything. I can make my own mistakes. But as I grew up, I learned like the reason for that, you know? So I learned why I'm not going to every party, because now I'm a well-rounded person and I don't want to go out every single weekend. I know how to just chill and relax. And it saved me from some things, you know what I mean? So I'm not influenced by different people. I'm not influenced by drugs. I'm not influenced by some things that other people who are out in the streets doing whatever they wanted to are influenced by. So I feel like now, or even the Saturday cleanings, we would clash about that every single weekend. Why do I gotta clean the house? You could do this. Why do I have to do this and my brother don't gotta do it? You're a woman. That's the things we would clash about. But now it's like I have my own house and I clean every single Saturday. So that built me to be like a well-rounded woman.
They didn't show us the struggles. We didn't see it. I wish I would have seen a little bit of the struggles, but no, I didn't see any struggles. My grandmother's another mother figure of mine. So she had 7 children, and we would have never known that she did it all by herself until they told us. We didn't see our grandfather all the time. He lived in California. He would come back and forth. But when they tell us the stories now as we're older, she was like, oh, yeah, I was going to college, and then I decided to go to college when I had your mom. And I'm just like, my mom was the last child, the 7th child. My grandmother went to college with all her other children. So they just made it look very easy. So I didn't see any of the struggles of motherhood until we kind of got older, like teenagers. Now I can have a better grasp and understanding of it.
Over, she definitely let me know she always reminded me I wasn't one of her little friends. But at the same time, we kind of were into the same things sometimes. Not everything, because at the same time, she is from a different generation than I am. But we were into a lot of the same things. So the pros to it was like I had the young, fun, hip mom that listened to the cool music and did all the fun things. So that was the fun part of it all. I think maybe the cons to it is maybe just, if I'm being authentic about the situation, I felt like my mom felt like we were in competition with each other. And I don't know why, and I've yet to ever had this conversation. So now you're privy to something that she doesn't even know. But and the reason I say that is because once I got to that age where I did start becoming a young woman and growing into my motherhood, my womanhood rather, it was like a competition thing. She was very, I don't want to say I hate to even say it like this, but I felt like she tried to tear me down and humble me in moments where I was trying to grow into the beautiful young lady that I was becoming, you know? I would hear all the time compliments from other people, but she would always make it her business to remind me, like, you ain't it. As crazy as that's going to sound, you know? I don't know if you've ever heard from other people situations as such where their moms are that way. And, you know, I'm not the only one. I've talked to other women. I know other people whose situations are remotely similar to mine, but my mom spent a lot of time nitpicking and just downplaying who I was as a person. I won't go too much into detail about that, but it was a lot of, I would say, verbal abuse in reality. I mean, my daughter, she's gorgeous, and if, you know, she's growing into her beauty, I'm going to celebrate that. I'm never going to make her feel less than, and even in her darkest moments and when she doesn't feel her best, I'm going to always remind her of that. But I didn't have that growing up. And again, I don't know where that stems from. I don't know if it has anything to do with my mom's, you know, maybe experiences, her own traumas, her being young as well, and feeling, like I said, feeling like I was some sort of competition. It was weird. I'm going to be completely honest with you. I grew up not even understanding it and still don't. But like you said, you know, your parents make mistakes. You don't want to hold it to them. She's the only thing that I got. She was a single mom. So
because my grandmother dealt with a lot of mental depression issues. So there were struggles there. And on my mom is such a sweet lady. So I've never really, like, she's totally different from my grandmother. Now my grandmother's deaf, rest in peace. But it just wasn't like she didn't let that affect her motherhood life. But her upbringing was rough. However, it never really played a part to her relationship with us. My grandmother, my mother relationship was like super rocky. Arguments, fights. We lived with my grandmother at one point in time. Kicked my mother out, cussed my mother out. Like it was hard because I was around that. Just because I knew that my grandmother was damaged, but my mother was so strong, she never let it affect her character. That's one thing I love about her.
I feel like talking to my mom, that had to develop over time, where she had to get comfortable with, okay, my daughter knows what sex is. My daughter is going to talk about this. Because I'll just bring something up and my mom be like, whoa. I would never forget one time I asked my mom, I said, Mom, what's a condom? She said ketchup and mustard, like a condiment. You know what I mean? So that's how our conversations was at first about different topics. But as I got older, she's like, okay, you're older now. So now we could talk about this. Now, okay, I understand. But when the topic first came up of things that's like touchy, like, Mom, I don't know what sex is. What is that? She sent me to her friend's house. Her friend is the person that had to talk with me and told me about relationships and sex, and this is how it works. And I spent the night over there, and then the next day I came back knowing all about it. So I was like, I'm not doing that, you know? So then, as I grow older though, we talk about it. We still aren't like too open about it. She doesn't want to talk about that type of stuff, but I can talk to her about, this is what I'm going through in a relationship, and she'll start to be like, okay, this is how you get through it. Or she'll start to finally tell me what she's been through to help me get through it. So she's more comfortable with it now that I'm older. But once I was younger, I talked to a friend about it who was like, okay, girl, this is what it is. This is how you do it and stuff like that. So, and as I grew up, she always like talked about being a virgin and how precious that was. So that's how our relationship was when it came to sex and deep stuff like that. So she always talked about be a virgin, stay a virgin until you get married, and that's it. So when I finally did, I waited until I was like 19. So when I finally did, she was like, I felt like I wasn't precious anymore. I wasn't that precious person because my mom put so much emphasis on that. So when I lost it, it was just like, it wasn't a good experience. And I felt guilty, you know what I mean? Because it was like, this is something that's supposed to be so precious. I understand why she did that, because it's like, if you would have waited, it saves you from heartache, you know, stuff like that. But I also know how I'm going to talk to my daughter about it, to let her know, if you want to wait, that's your choice. You're fine, but you're precious either way it goes. You're not more precious because you waited, or you're not less precious because you didn't, you know?
I definitely do want to understand her side. I feel like one time we had a conversation and we almost had that conversation, but she was like, I'll talk to, you know, I said something to her and I don't remember, but in the midst of it, I had a breakdown and told her, like, you know, why have you been this way or something of that nature. And she was like, you know, we won't talk about this right now, but I'll tell you one day. Because I feel like I kind of pressed her and kind of was reaching for an answer and seeking some type of understanding. You know, it was just, like I said, a very vulnerable moment for me. So I had that with her, but she was like, you know, we'll talk about this, not right now, but basically she would give me her side of things. But yeah, no, I definitely do want to know her side. I do. Even though I feel like it is pretty deep and it's probably going to be very emotional, I would much rather know than not know. Because to be completely honest with you, it's the not knowing part, why she treated me that way, that eats me up to this day.
Do you feel comfortable talking to your mother?
Yes, I'm very comfortable, actually, to be honest with you. I will call her and tell her anything under the sun. Her feedback sometimes is not always what I'm looking for. I'll be completely honest with you. Sometimes I'll call her and I'm like, oh, why'd I call you? Because you just don't say the right things. And when I say the right things, I'm not saying what I want to hear.
Right.
I'm saying like truly, I'm looking for like an experienced woman's opinion, and I almost feel like she doesn't have that. That's not what I'm receiving when I'm talking to her.
I feel like that's what makes me the mother I am today, though. I remember the things my mother used to say to me, like, you're sitting by the window waiting for your father to come and he ain't never gonna come, you know, with some other words mixed thrown up in there. And I would never do that to my kids. If he don't come, maybe he got caught up, you know, or well, me and you, let's go do this now. Let's go, let's go. And I try to like redirect my children if they encounter that situation, and my older one has before. So I just remember how I felt as a child from the things my mother did to me. And honestly, she's the reason why I'm an awesome mother today, because I would never, ever let my kids feel a quarter of what I felt, just in my childhood.
It's like a constant, like, upbringing of damage after damage after damage, and then like that, what they were raised by is what they're going to become in their motherhood, in their parenthood. So I will say my aunt, she unfortunately was kind of like the ones who let that affect how she is with her kids today. Really, really rocky relationship, always lashing out. So I think, like, for my mother, luckily it didn't affect her, but it did damage her other siblings. Like, they had issues growing up, like drinking issues and issues with like mental issues and mental health issues, and always wanting to fight and outraged and unhappy with their life. So I really don't know why my mother was different from the rest of her siblings, and it's really her and my Uncle Benny. My Uncle Benny lives in Arizona, and then my aunt, she lives in Ohio, but she was kind of like the one that was more so completely like taking the same footsteps as my grandmother. And to this day, they have somewhat of a rocky relationship, because my mother always tells me she reminds me so much of your grandmother, like just like how she is, always angry and looking for an issue and looking for a problem. But my mother, my nana always called her the sweet pea. She was like her sweet pea. So my mother ended up being like kind of like not like I said, not letting some of those like upbringings and factors really affect us in our upbringing. But she was able to beat those odds, which was a plus. I think she just kind of had a lot to look forward to, and it really helped her with our upbringing as well.
Mental health is something that I wish I would have seen it, but it would have been a good insight to have, because you just go through it. I know for me, you just go through it and you never seen it before, so you don't acknowledge the times in which you are struggling mentally and you still have to be a mom. And you don't feel the comfortability to say, hey, I'm not well, to anybody around you, because I've never seen anyone struggle with that. But my mom, she told me later on, like, it was tons of times where I was just in my room and balled up because of life things that she was dealing with as a female, as a woman, as a wife. But she just did it in a very discreet way. So in hindsight, I'm like, I wish somebody would have told me what to do when I'm overwhelmed, and I still have to wake up and be a mom, because that's very hard.
Why do you think she didn't talk to you about that?
Trying to protect us as children, keep us, innocent and not be burdened, because as children, you're going to want to protect your mom if something's wrong with her. So just trying to protect us, I think. Yeah. I do speak to my daughter, because I tried for a long time. I thought my mom, like, we take them out of this human part of themselves. I just think your mom. That's it. Like, mom's superhero, and totally take away the fact that she's a human being. And I want my daughter to know that, so that when she goes through life, she doesn't put these standards and all these bars on herself to try to be perfect. So sometimes if I am overwhelmed, I communicate that to her. Like, mommy is overwhelmed right now. I need to rest right now. I need to take care of myself because I'm not mentally well, And she's so mature because of that type of dynamic that we have, that she understands that. And I think she appreciates it from how she like speaks and communicates to me. So depending on the situation.
No, so we never openly had that conversation like, hey, mom, I'm not a virgin no more. It was more like, oh, I see your body changes. So you know how people say, oh, when you have sex, your hips spread, stuff like that. Yeah, so it was just like, she got a different demeanor, so she sort of knew. It was like an unsaid thing. And it's funny because when I did become pregnant, it was like her friends and stuff like that was like, we always wanted to just think of you as a virgin, but now we can't think of you like that. Like, it's too late. So, yeah, no, we never had that talk, but then I could still talk to her. I would never go to my mom and just talk about sex or stuff like that, but it would just be like, I know in college something did happen to me where I was like sexually assaulted, so I did have to come to her about that. And that's like the closest we got to actually talking about sex. So she talked about what happened, and we talked about, okay, you're okay. We went to the doctor and things like that. And that's when I got more open with her because I had to talk to her about that situation. So I believe that's when we started talking more openly about that subject. I wish I could have came to her. Yes, I do wish I could have came to my mom just because of how I felt after. Like, I felt like my self-worth was horrible after. Like, I'm not precious no more. I'm not this angel. I'm not worthy of love and everything just because of the emphasis she put on being a virgin. I felt like I'm not precious. She would judge me. I'm not that precious little girl anymore. I'm not, because when we would talk about anything, it would be like, oh, you could pick anybody you want. You're a virgin, so you could date anybody you want, and you could have this because you're so precious, you know? So I felt like I would let her down if I told her, like, I lost my virginity, you know? And then it would be that tight grip that, okay, now you're really not going anywhere. No, I'm going to call you every day. I'm going to call you every night, see what you're doing while you're on campus. Now I don't trust you. So, no, it was just like, that's something I'm just not going to talk to her about. Yeah.
She would make sure, like I said, she was a great provider. I'll never take that away from her. I will never act like she was absent and then she just left us in a house full of, you know, no lights or no heat or no food. Like, we had all of those things. So she was a great provider, but I do feel like there was definitely a disconnect. And none of my siblings feel like we have a connection with her, unfortunately.
Can you say out loud that your mom did the best she could with what she had?
No. No. I mean, I feel like she thinks she did the best, but I in my heart, I feel like she could have did better. I'm a very forgiving person, to be honest with you. Like, that really is just in my character. Like, I'm the type of person, like you said, it starts with self. I don't want to hold that in. I don't want to carry that. I don't want that to spill over into my life. Like, I'm a mom now, so I don't even want to harbor those feelings for too long. And to be completely honest with you, I do dismiss them. I have suppressed them. I've kind of put them away, stored them in a box and said, they'll sit there. I'll deal with them when I deal with them. But I do feel like I'm willing to do the work to forgive her and just kind of hear her out. I personally am not a grudge holder. So even if she were to tell me the raw, authentic truth and it wasn't pretty to hear, I can receive that. Because me being me, I'm just a realist. Like, I'm real about situations. I'm not the type of person. I like to hear the real, raw truth, and I won't be upset about it, if that makes any sense. And I'm that way across the board. Friendships, relationships, even with my daughter. Like, I even let her tell me like it is, and I can receive that because I'm open to that. But that's a choice that I've made in my life. Yeah.